Hi, this is Anna Imagination with the Healing Garden. I am jumping on for a few minutes, just trying to sort out some stuff. I have been at an ethical dilemma for a year now, several years, 2 years now. And I only recently got the ability to articulate and communicate my situation. It's extraordinary when we fail to practice communication, which is talking and speaking. When we're children, we don't have a problem making errors. We don't have a problem trying and opening up and speaking. It's not until we are 3, 4, 5 that we start to get ridiculed and we start to lose our ability to practice speaking. It becomes unsafe to speak. So our communication significantly suffers as soon as we are conditioned that it's no longer safe to speak. And as a result, our speech ends up becoming almost stunted. We're incapable of articulating emotions, directing thoughts and feelings. We misspeak a lot. And then a lot of people are very quick to judge, laugh, mock, and immediately get defensive because our communication is so abysmal. So that you'll say X, and then the person will immediately launch into a defensive stance, making it and forcing it that it is still psychologically unsafe to open up and communicate, even though we are 30 years old, 40 years old, 50 years old, 60 years old. And when you open up and you speak and that upsets somebody you love, that just reinforces the message, it is not safe to speak. So when I found this space with YouTube and podcasting and I stepped into it and I started off, I don't know how long ago I started off, but what was it? 3 months ago, back in September, I started podcasting because I did meditation for beginners. When I first started, I was terrified to open my mouth. And then I went, okay. And I was very aware that I have a weird accent. I stutter. One of my altars has a Scottish Irish accent that comes out at random. I was raised listening to BBC television and audiobooks and the London Philharmonic. So 99% of the music I listened to growing up was by Brits. It was from London. So all of the music that I heard, when I sing, I immediately jump over to a British accent because all of my music was from London. In addition to that, like Sarah Brightman is one of my favorite singers. And so I grew up listening to Sarah Brightman's voice. Like, I cannot sing Phantom of the Opera without a British accent. I don't know how. So as all of this continues, and it's extraordinary. It's a lot to take in. And I get into this, I started it and there was just so much. I knew all of my verbal errors. I knew all of the quirks with my speech, but I pressed on, I kept doing it, and I kept pushing through anyway. And I found myself putting out like 5 videos, 5 podcasts a day. And I go through fluxes where I either put out 1 or I put out 5. It's all over the place. And I'm fine with that. I'm perfectly fine with that. But I've gotten to a point where I realized my speech was cleaning up. I realized that my confidence in speaking really solidified and my errors became fewer and fewer. My stuttering diminished to the point where I think this whole week I stuttered once. I noticed that my accent has stopped fluxing all over the place. I've narrowed down my speech now. I noticed that I'm no longer mispronouncing words like I did. Even in my writing, when I'm texting people, I notice that I'll give a word and then I'll see that it's incorrect and I will think to check the definition, confirm, and then go back and recorrect it. Now, first, this is all a reflection and a result of my mental healing. Second, it is a reflection of me leveling up to level 8 recently. And third, it is also practice and confidence building through speech, which most of us were raised without psychological safety in speech. So, needless to say, as I'm working on speech, it's opened me up for this massive time in my life where I'm suddenly finding it easy to articulate feelings, emotions, and thoughts that 3 months ago I was incapable of even thinking, let alone saying out loud. This is why we journal. This is why it is vital that we practice speaking. We are so hardwired to learn speaking that it's just It's the first thing we are taught when we are 2 years old, when we're infants. We immediately get our visual up, we immediately get our audio and our vocal and throat open. And these three things, visual, speaking, listening, are vital to our mental health. And they are grossly, grossly neglected. So we're at a point where it's finally, yeah, it's absolutely finally starting to come together. It's absolutely starting to come together. So what we're going to do is I'm going to start providing assignments, literally speech assignments to help people get through. I'm just, there's so much to take in. There is so much to take in. And I understand a lot now. We'll create a space on the internet where we're trying to learn, we're trying to reach out, we're trying to educate. We create a space safe enough for us to open up and be vulnerable. And then we've got people who are hateful of themselves so much that they come into our classroom and they just shit all over everything without any respect that we're trying to learn, trying to grow, trying to heal. They feel so horrible about themselves that they have to come into this space and just shit on what we are doing here because they feel absolutely horrible about their own self. And a lot of people are really working hard to better themselves and carve out a safe space so others can learn and heal. And a lot of what I do with these videos is teaching people how to look inward on themselves. I love carrying around mirrors with me and showing people exactly how beautiful or how ugly they choose to be. I look right through subconscious minds, right into identity. It's a skill I've always had. I can separate a person's subconscious mind that's filled with fear and hate and rage because you don't know what's wrong, because the answers were kept from you. What's wrong is your identity was taken away from you. And if you're here and you're listening, maybe you should be listening and asking yourself what exactly about yourself you still love left, and then try and find the rest of you that you still love, instead of posting, trolling, hurtful comments to other people. Maybe you should reprioritize your focus, because you came here for a reason. You want to be seen? I see you. I see somebody who is desperate to be seen, and they don't know how to do that. I know how. It's called communication and opening your voice. It's called you're the one who's not looking at yourself, and that's why you feel so alone. That's where the emotional loneliness comes from. It's when you hate yourself so much that you have thrown yourself away for your own safety. But you're safe now. It's time to look at yourself now and get yourself back. Self-care is a phenomenal way to start all of that. The reason why is because self-care is actually you realizing that you need to prioritize yourself, which is something you were told not to do. It's something that you were absolutely told you should not do. It hurts. When you have to choose between yourself and your safety, there's very little that hurts. When you have to choose between your safety and your authority, it hurts. It rips you apart that somebody made you amputate your own self. It's painful. I've been here so many times. And it has always been a safe place for me to open up. And not anymore. And now I'm wondering, the other day I opened up a video and I made a comment about the comments I allow people to leave. And somebody said to me that by allowing comments, it shows that I'm growing. And that is wrong. I grew when I decided to allow comments. I grew when I decided to not allow comments. And I grew again when I decided to try comments again. And I'm growing again when I think, you know what? This is my time and my space. I will be doing this my way. And it isn't a reflection of growth, whether or not I choose or not choose to shut down comments. It is a decision of how I want to build and cater my own safe space for me. Because not everyone is respectful. So, and I spend more time focusing on the comments than actually saying what it is I came here to say, which I still haven't said because I know I'm not safe now. So this is information I will be keeping to myself, which makes this whole video now obsolete. And it's no longer about what I came here to say about vulnerability and ethical conflict. And I'm sitting here with this massive conundrum now going, how do I proceed with the witch's corner? Because it's interesting the kind of people that have been attracted to it, which means I need to rebrand it. And I know exactly how to do that. I know exactly how to rebrand so that I don't attract the wrong kind of people. There's always an end of a conversation, the end of a video, where there's this confusion on whether or not you should continue or not, how to wrap it up. One moment. Reporting abuse. It's a stage. It's a stage where no one can throw a tomato at you. And what I wanted to talk about was what to do when you have two conflicting ethics. Ironically, it's when I was experiencing somebody else's ethical dilemma. Whenever we have a conflict in our cognitive core, pain results. It's where all pain comes from. It is where you have your perspective versus an external belief that contradicts your perspective, that creates frustration, discomfort, annoyance and then pain, or you have your ethic and a belief that contradicts, that one hurts the most. Whenever your ethic and your belief contradict. And then your perspective is also askew and taken away from you, that creates more pain. And the pain ranges from fear to like a projection of what if the pain is to come, versus the pain is here, the discomfort is severe, it's mild. It ranges from mild to severe. The more discomfort you have, the closer it gets to pain. So when you feel discomfort, that's pain. That's baby pain. Discomfort is baby pain. And then I later learned that you can have two ethics that contradict each other, and you can have somebody who you love and their ethics, and that contradicts, and that causes pain. So as long as you have full alignment, you're fine. But the minute something's misaligned, that's where pain comes from. And I have an ethic, and my partner has an ethic, and right now they're conflicting. And I love him. So now it's this massive conflict of interest. And it's been very, very difficult because first, I haven't had the ability to articulate any of this until now. And this morning I was able to sit down and explain all of this to him finally, clearly. And it was a lot of material that I was able to finally come back on. And when I came back to it, I wanted to share it with you. I wanted to jump in here and say, hey, I just had this massive experience. I located two ethics. Actually, there were three ethics total. Two were on one side, one was on the other. And what I uncovered was actually the concept of love, unconditional love. And what I noticed in people is that we are very much in a society of you should have conditions, you shouldn't have conditions. Two sides of a different coin here when it comes to love. Should you love unconditionally, or should you have terms? Now, a spectrum again, those are extremes. Both are extreme, both are wrong. Both are extreme, both are wrong. And the reason why is because this one emanates this kind of abuse, and this one emanates another kind of abuse. They're both results of abuse. That middle ground, yeah, you should love unconditionally under the right circumstances. And that's really what I came here to tell you. You should love unconditionally under the right circumstances. But people don't. Boundaries, red flags, are supposed to tell you the conditions are right. Now you can love unconditionally. And this is the conversation I needed to have. I had my first troll. So part of me was going, yay, I got my first troll. And then I really wanted to psychoanalyze the troll. And I did. And that was a lot of fun. And I had this massive, oh, that's why they're doing what they're doing. I get it now. I understand what I'm doing. I understand her perspective. I understand what's going on here. This makes a lot of sense. So yeah, it was definitely, and then it was distracting, which is a problem I have with comments in general, is because I want to give you the time of the day, but I'm trying to focus on what I'm having to say. And I do not enjoy anything with splitting perspectives. So, or splitting my attention, I need to say. So that being said, we should love unconditionally, but under the right conditions. And we're not doing the proper work prior to get into the right conditions. We're not doing what's required to get us to where we need to get in the right conditions. We are just loving unconditionally, getting hurt, and then slandering all who goes forward. Oh, you shouldn't love unconditionally. But there is a point where you do find the right conditions. And then, yeah, you should be loving unconditionally, because that opens the whole ethic of what love is. And boy, does that get into stuff. So it's quite extraordinary. It's really quite extraordinary. And it did come down to whether or not I was going to love this person unconditionally or not. And I realized, and it's funny because prior to being level 8, my perspective was always, oh, if you have a conflict of ethics, it can't work. And now I'm going, well, wait a minute. If I have a different set of ethics than him, what if this is just one more problem we should work out? Why would you terminate a relationship just because your ethics don't match? He's not hurting anyone. So what's the problem? And that got me into, Under what circumstance should you terminate a relationship? And there's this concept of a perfect match out there. And there's no such thing. There is no such thing as a perfect match. What there is two people who want to work through it or they don't. And that's all it is. Do you want to work through it or don't you? And if you want to work through it, you got yourself a relationship, any kind of a relationship. If you don't want to work on it, you don't have a relationship. And that's really all relationships are. When you step outside of the patriarchy, all that matters is, are we going to work on this or not? Are we going to work through the problems or not? And if you decide to work through the problems, you got yourself a relationship. Platonic, romantic, doesn't matter. That's a relationship because you are choosing to work through the problems. Now, you can get into the value of how far are you willing to go? Well, how much do you value the relationship? How much do you value the relationship? How far are you willing to go with it? And that tells you right up front whether or not you're taking it long-term or short-term. So it really comes down to, and once you're in that case, then where's your breaking point? That's the other question is, do you have a breaking point? But you should have already established that the person's ethics are X. They are the kind of person who you can allow into your circle of trust, knowing that they're not going to violate any grand ethical code because you've already cleared them for that. Hence red flags. You've already negated that. You've already cleared that, okay, this is a person who is someone I can love unconditionally under the right circumstances. Now your value for them goes up because they do have a foundation of ethics that you can allow to feel safe enough to love unconditionally. And that's it. Do you feel safe enough to love? Do you feel safe enough to love yourself? Do you feel safe enough to love other people? Do you feel safe enough to claim your own authority? Because when we don't feel safe enough to do these very basic things that we require, do you feel safe enough to grow? Or will your growth result in abandonment and rejection from those you currently love? That's why people don't grow. That's why people stay with mental illness, because they're being forced to choose between their acceptance and their mental health. That's why people break it off. That's why people don't pursue therapy. That's why people say, I don't want to get help, because they would rather be accepted with their mental illness than live without the mental illness. So when you have a relationship, it comes down to learning how to trust the person, knowing that it's safe enough to trust them, realizing that they are healthy enough that you can bring them into your circle. And once you do, their value shoots right up, because it's not very often you get somebody who absolutely can be trusted that deeply. So their value goes through the roof. They become irreplaceable. And as long as they're not abusing you, absolutely. So now we talk about unconditional love. What are your conditions for loving? At what point would you break the condition? And one thing that I keep coming back to with my relationship is the things that I would consider absolute deal breakers. It's not in his psychological makeup to ever do. It's just not possible. So he can have whatever ethics he has, so long as he doesn't harm anyone, and he cannot harm people. That's not in his psychological makeup, which means I can unconditionally love him. Now I'm presented with a situation where I can feel safe enough to love to that level. Now I can prioritize staying with him no matter what, always being there to support and love him. Now I can start prioritizing things like knowing he's not going to abandon or reject me. He now knows I'm not going to abandon or reject him because I love him without condition. And he has more than proven that he loves me without condition, because neither of us are living a life where we're harming somebody else, which is our real core belief. And we don't have that in our psychological makeup. So we have this beautiful cocoon of trust between us. And because we've been able to create this cocoon of trust between he and I, now that opens us up for a whole nother level of relationship and love that most people level 5 and under can't even fathom, because it requires that you absolutely abandon most of your mental illness, if not all of them. And it requires courage, trust, and a level of growth most people are not able or willing to accept. There is like a whole nother level up of love and romance and relationships. But when that love then conflicts with your ethics, your perspective is solid. But ethically, now you're going, who do I betray? Who am I loyal to? Now, here's where I had a conflicting ethic. My first ethic was, you do not abandon somebody you love. You don't abandon them. You're there for them. You support them. And I also have a very strong ethic for forgiveness and allowing for mistakes and growth. And there's no one on this earth who should ever pressure another person to heal faster. So all you can really do when you have somebody in a hard situation is give them the patience, the space, the kindness, the gentleness they need to get through their situation. And now, because I've gone through all of this logic and ethic, I can now step back from it all and ask myself a single question. Now, how do I deal with a partner who's doing something that I don't like? And that's the real problem. That's the real internal conflict. How do I deal with that? But it's no longer an ethic. It's no longer this huge, it's your ethic versus love. Now it's a little thing that's this big. So the pain is completely gone. The pain is gone because the contradiction between ethic, and love is gone, because I've removed the contradiction. And I came here to show you the logical argument I used so that you can take that argument for yourself and apply it to your own ethics, loves, beliefs, and perspective. When you have pain, you can go, oh, there's pain inside of me right now. Why do I hurt? Where is the contradiction? What questions do I need to ask myself? Yeah, it's all of that. I have a lot to reflect on still. I'm still adjusting after the move. But I am putting up a lot of material and getting things into place for some other stuff happening. So once I normalize, things will be definitely better. Thank you so much for joining me, and may the kindest of words always find you.